Präsenter der Kaiser des Französischen Monarchie. Das Thema ist Vereinigte Breiten. Montronder dies keine Verantwortung wird einer reingehrten Morten selbst verladen. Nicht einmal zu seiner englischen Literatur. Mir unser ist ihr Pianoforte. Mein wahrer Führer auf die Gerechtigkeit setzt. The present, so the Kaiser, the French monarchy, emperor. That subject is for some debate, as present matron of honor. These discharge no responsibility for a government committing murder by election, not even to its most elected English literature. Mine as ours. Your pianoforte, my true leader, than justice herself, QC, Queen's Counsel.
What is a piano? What is a leader? Mein Führer. What is a party? What lends wisdom to those who wrote it? And who did write Wisdom by Moriarty? Who did write Wisdom, Watson? By Morse. Who did write Before the Hand of a King? Who did write Before the Hand? The hand of the idiot. Who did write? Who did write the part for poor Tom? But God themselves. Poor Tom was not the challenged of the poor Tom who was injured in the war. Poor Tom was not the corporal who did not know whose sex they were or what was sex. And wisdom. You would need to be poor Tom to understand who is Jean-Pierre Sartre.
A man went into his stable shop and bought a camel. The camel said, "Thank you very much." But a lady went and looked at this poor camel, and it looked at her not very, very much. What am I going to do about the price of our affair when you're only looking at it from your point of view? I tell you what, it's going to take more works of art that ever grace the stage of London town. Has anybody got a fiver? I'm only asking 3,200 for love, not it.
So how can you ask 10 quid to say I love you when the Chinese will give you love for 50 quid? I wouldn't put it this way if I were you, bidder. I would get a crown and stick it up. The justice for a common man is something I could do for more like 10 or 20 or 50,000 more. Oh, we're gonna love you, Mr. Hitler. Your presidency's not very fine. They stick him in the prison. They put him in the jail. They even do the jailhouse rock. What are you gonna do about the president when my bankers crack? If you're gonna pay for love, you wanna get a banker's hat. You're gonna not get it much from me, and how's your father? We'll stick it up your supermarket and British Steel. You would need to be King Lear to know what is truth. And you would need to have the name of Edmund as one of your middle names. However, they try to misspell it, to say something else about a society which places men before boys to be shot. This pianoforte, therefore, what is il pianoforte?
So, what have you to say for Mussolini? What have you to say for Falstaff? What have you to say for the music provided of an era?
You would give them Chinese cereal.
That, my friend, you think you can create suspension for a Ford. You think you can build a piano for the old Ford in London by the name of John Broadwood and Son.
You think you know how to write opera.
In the name of who?
Il pianoforte is a derivation by your previous ancestors, and they would need to be ancestors, wouldn't they? How can il pianoforte be a descendant of what you are now? Because what you are now is what you were precisely when I started this lecture. It is not a lecture, you viewer. I am not in any way supporting you, viewer, because I do not know you. I am supporting you, viewer, because you are the true figure of the corporation scramble which made you a true emperor, or the complete liar. I place before your king and your scholastic monastery. We have seen this scholastic monastery, which has bound volumes of the works of the royal poet whose work you can only imagine what it speaks of. about the wonder of the churches. Such poets as great as, I couldn't even think of a name anything to do with Benjamin. I couldn't even think of a name to do with Churchill, who was this unknown poet. Nothing to do with the hierarchy that was of the great John Churchill, 1st Duke of Marlborough, in 1600. History who reared its head by the revolution under William of Orange and Queen Mary, who was not really queen, was she? Although she would, by some accounts of Bloody Mary, have been titled Queen Mary II, because Bloody Mary, who you called Bloody Mary, came before her. And that was only because, not of any greatness here, that was because Bloody Mary became your king following the death of that tragic son, and I do mention the tragic son in Edward VI, nothing to do with the Duke of Windsor. Edward VI was the son of King Henry VIII, and King Henry VIII sadly passed away in 1547, but not before having murdered Thomas Cromwell, Thomas More, Anne Boleyn, placed Catherine of Aragon away in some abode in Suffolk. And you expect this fella to be able to perform and entertain your corporations, your ships, your majestic theatres, those before such cinematography ever was destroyed by such this. Let's take Frankenstein, shall we? What gave rise to Frankenstein? Who wrote it? Now, you may need to delve into the mind of the lady who was supported by these great people. These great, weren't they? I would need to look into the surrounding of Nicola of Eton. Nicola of Eton is a fictitious woman who walked through Eton, and it is alleged that she sang the song for me in my ear that went something to this effect: roll out the burial, give me a burial of fun. Yes, the barrels that they rolled out at Gallipoli were in some respect Churchill's misunderstanding of how the enemy was going to react to the facts which were surrounding the intrusion into the Turkish Empire, that meant so many Australian troops were completely slaughtered. Now, I would not suggest that the pianoforte, this ill pianoforte, could ever tell you its truth about who you are as a player. And why can it not? It cannot, viewer, because you harp after the works of J.S. Bach. J.S. Bach was, in some degree, befested by so many children, he could hardly see his wife through so many, that by 1750 the composer was truly dead. But by that time, you must not get the idea that the idea of the pianoforte was ever going to be anything other than real.
Give me a barrel of love.
because sure. What Bach tried to tell you is that it had all been already invented. And the pianoforte, il pianoforte, you call it a piano, yes. Do you know where piano comes from? Piano comes from the word pathos. It may not look like it, but it has so many letters, and does this breathe as much so many vowels? I wonder the prime ministers who are thrown out of public schools in other countries, such as other than France, are to some degree faced with the dilemma of do they ride by the angel of death theory that so many Jews were persecuted because of the Nazis, or do they ride by the theory that J.S. Bach had nothing to do with the works of W.A. Mozart because they were born and died, as in the case of Mozart, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and I would appreciate you pronouncing please my middle name, was born in 1756 to a rather established family.
That, you know, she is international concert pianist.
What kind of fool am I? There was a time when we were shown, when we did out and out, and there was a place when we were starting over. We let the bow break, we let the heartaches in. Who's sorry now? Who's sorry now? Who's sorry now?
If Mr. Thor of Inspector Morse ever described anything as a band of honor, I would like to see and hear from all the dead of those enemy agents who were alleged of either side to have been said to have committed atrocities. Because frankly, if you look at the state of Parliament in Il Pianoforte, since the invention of the vestibule, let us take, of the, let us call it the virginal. And they also, didn't they called that little instrument also the virginals. You could call it the virginals or the virginal. And this was designed not by invention itself. It wasn't designed by a Chinese person, no. The idea of the S on virginal or virginal was because they frankly couldn't speak the language. Mr. William Shakespeare, the name that you now write on my grave, which is T for trash, you do speak highly of me, but you tell such lies. The truth about Il Pianoforte, they will try to tell you, is that I never tried to play it. But the truth is they tried to keep me away from it because they stole and they priced me out of existence. Now, you wonder what happened through the spinet and the harpsichord to the piano. Its invention by Bartolomeo Cristofori, which was, they say, in 1700, and the Tuscan royal palaces by the Medicis and so forth. Well, you only have to look at what happened to the Villa d'Este in Tivoli Gardens, Rome, to realise that frankly, when I hear Rachmaninoff, my ears burn, my spine shivers, and my malcontent is kicking footballs right where you want to put them. And you want to place. And yet, in a game of rugby, how unconstitutional is a game of rugby that allows a score of 1 goal to be placed by the wrong decision of a referee, and then that referee allowed by some French honour or dishonour to walk away. And I have one song for you, Mr. Referee. Walk on, with hope in your heart, but you'll never walk alone with truth, Mr. Referee, because those producers of the game confounded it by the lie of what is sport that allowed the side to win that should never have. Now, ta-ta! You speak about steel in piano making. Steel in piano making was established, they tell you, by a gentleman by the name whose corporation was in somewhat blemished by the descendancy or the ancestry, perche, of Her Majesty Queen Victoria, whose grandson was Kaiser Wilhelm II, who was the son of, the daughter of Princess Vicky. Now, Princess Vicky, it's always wrongly assumed, was Princess Victoria. This is not Victoria the Queen. This is Princess Vicky, who was one of some number of children by the Queen. A queen which put herself into isolation for 40 years. So what is my history of this piano? Is that you are listening to a piano which you have not seen. But this seller does not use private bidding identities. This seller performs and provides to you the basis by Queen's Counsel. But it is this Queen, it is no other Queen. I was born a thorn. It is this Queen that does, they say, not know which face she is, that does not know which entity she is, which they would try to put down before corporations who claim to be greater than me and have the exit placed above their door, which is to be obeyed as policy. Yet in your institutions, the truth of who killed those 007 and who went to Auschwitz and who really died and suffered, because even your corporations could not tell you the truth, because it would have cost them their own lives. You want to ask them what is the piano, and then you want to ask them to play it. So, for poor Tom, King Lear, who never lived, King Lear was a fictitious, and the two gentlemen of Verona, and they tell you my play was a right rave for an impropriety of grandeur or anything great. But that in itself is a lie, because I was never allowed to place it before so bad. That, therefore, il pianoforte. Piano derived as pathos. And what is pathos? Viewer, you can read it in any one of my listings and my performances. What is ethos? You can also see that about it in any one of my performances or my histories. What is brand? You may go unto others and ask them what is brand, and you will hear from the minds, in truth, of some very great people, some very wonderful men, and some wonderful women as well, who are certain of their brand of London, as they are as certain of the brand of Berlin. Yet that brand, my friends, Romans and countrymen, you have not ears, but who have eyes, for neither who have ears only can more have eyes to see than those who even have eyes. You find confusing to listen to the world's greatest pianist. You find confusing, new word, confusing, for many of you, to listen to the history given by those who only cannot write it, can they? They only cannot write it because if they did, it would be stolen. If they did, it would be, therefore, some corruption of the thief. Or would it be your next marriage vow?
Hi, I'm Louis Singer.
Show me a girl with a high. Show me a girl with a low. But don't show me you. Who are you? I was no one to be seen. It is called stealth. Show me a man whose life was never Oliver, a publican who would easily surrender. And you are a man who's so true. Could there be another you? I wonder. I want to be around to pick up the pieces when somebody breaks your heart, when somebody twice as smart as these floral arms. Show me a girl. Show me a dog. Show me the dogs of war, whose bidding is unprivate. Show me the cat who's real, whose bidding is hidden so, unbecoming of the soldier.
Piano player, are you buying a piano because you are truly out of your mind? Are you buying my piano because I have lost my head? Are you opening your wallet for the monarch who claims that the oldest parliament in the world is from the 13th century? Are you opening it for a monarch who had some squabble over France, that the Black Prince needed to never really be crowned? Are you buying a piano brand by such madness that you do not know that the speech that summed up the whole preponderance before this wars and summons of blood of Agincourt of 1415 is only something which Louis Singer speaks in some excess, and you wonder if buying a piano is only simply about going into a shop and opening your wallet. Oh, in truth, you can do that, viewer. I am not stopping you. I would only remind you of the time when a particular Frankenstein was ushered out of one of the finest shops in London because this monster was more loyal than its breeder. It's Frankenstein, yes. But Frankenstein, viewer, is not born of frankincense, is not born of gold, because a pianist, the last thing they need, or a poet, is gold. Unless your name again, as I said before so often, is like Benjamin. And your name would need to be established in some guild as a member of any corporation if it tried to tell you who you were or what you had to do for the corporation. Because whereas 008, I have sent a secret agent into the field to discover, yes, let's just say not to establish, to discover what might be the lies, if you like, the lies that placed my Tilbury grand finale of Queen Elizabeth I at Tilbury in the preponderant question of would she be supported or supportive of her soldiers who were about to go off to fight the Duke of Medina, His Excellency, who they think that because a king of Spain, King Philip II, who was being, in some respects, being blamed for this Spanish entourage of ships, might have had something to do with that war of the Spanish Armada. But how much do you know of the truth of that relationship, which Bloody Mary, let's face it, you called her that. I did not. I do not like the word Bloody Mary, because it does sound in some respect as though the lady was at some fault. Yet this was a staunch Roman Catholic, a very staunch belief about certain things. And we are not talking here about religion, viewer. We are talking about the belief she had about what you might call the virginals. Because isn't it true that it is a misconception to brand such by names as virginal and virginal when you are only told which lovers in Queen Elizabeth II she had? How much can a king cost a throne? In 1547, for the next 300 years, is told by the Resurrect in, for instance, the death of the king. Your own people murdered. Leicester, Bosworth Field during 1485, Bosworth, Battle of Bosworth, and whose remains you dug up earlier in the year beneath what became of the council car park, who in this lusty stealth of nations does have more fierce quality than doth go into a whole tribe of fops got between sleep and wake. Troubles, this field of troubles, even this squalor that is before an empiric state such as our Eastern sisters and great scholastic sopranos and contraltos, they are, truly. But who adulterated the music of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart has to establish what is the truth that is truly English, or what is the truth that is more truly Polish. That you don't have to ask someone who was persecuting and beheading King Charles I in 1649. You don't have to ask Oliver Cromwell, who was dying in 1658, Lord Protector of your country. You don't have to ask him why they excavated his remains from Westminster Abbey, 1660, and had them reburied in unconsecrated ground at Tyburn. You don't have to ask a Henry VIII, who is responsible for the disposal of some 6 wives, what is consecrated ground, because you are living on that consecrated ground, viewer. You are living in the Church of England, which King Henry VIII created by the hand of Thomas Cromwell. Now, so who is the king's fixer? The king's fixer was, to some extent, the king's son, who established by Edward VI the Protestant in the woman, who established the in madness of sanctity, the suggestion that Catholicism could be supported any longer after 1553. You would need to ask William Shakespeare why the 2 gentlemen of Verona were not performed properly. It is, in some respect, you might say, because the Church of Rome was in some annihilated state some years, 50 years before, by His Majesty, that they call greatness. But that is so much more by brand than it is by honour. Then we come to the Duke of Marlborough and the Churchill speech, which I am sorry, but I have not written it yet. And I am in some dumbstruck by the escape of Gallipoli that allows a country to still further win. And why? I am at some defeat, viewer, as to what imprisoned and killed and murdered so many Australian soldiers when a country whose stated history about even its Australian artists now has placed them after painting a portrait of the Queen in an English prison. You might need to listen to my song for Aphrodite, and you might need to be told any number of lies about who I am, you are, in order to be accepted